Grand Admiral Vesta Tor stood silently at his desk and looked over the documents which had been delivered to him earlier that day. These documents were the culmination of 3 years of research and evaluation. His decision would determine the direction of the Tagali Star Navy for the next 100 cycles. Ever since the end of the Third Galactic War, the Tagali had been attempting to replace the ships they had lost during the conflict. The Tagali Star Navy, though on the victorious side of the war, had suffered terrible losses against the Torkara Pact. The Battle of Toma Prime, the Battle of Luska IV, and the Battle of the Corvus system had proven to be devastating for the fleet. With the final blow coming at the Battle of Tagali Prime, as what was left of their fleet was decimated and their homeworld was occupied by the Pact forces. But with the Pact's defeat at the Third Battle of Tokra Free and their surrender, the Tagali government restored and their homeworld freed. But it would be years before reconstruction efforts on their world would be completed, and even longer time before their fleet could be rebuilt. But after so many cycles, the Parliament had agreed to set aside a proper budget for the acquisition of new military vessels, and as a result, the Tagali had sent out tenders to the many shipyards within the galaxy. Soon, design concepts began to come in, and the process of filtering them out began. But eventually, 3 shipyards were selected. Kalahari Audible Yards. Much like the Tagali, the Kalahari Cooperative had been on the winning side of the war, but unlike the Tagali, their fleet had more or less survived intact throughout the conflict. Kalahari Audible Yards' design proposal was based off of their Yutang-class missile corvettes, a vessel which made up the bulk of the Kalahari post-war fleet. At a length of 150 meters, the Yutang class was not a particularly large vessel, but it did reflect the Kalahari's naval doctrine of using small but fast warships to swarm larger enemy formations with missiles. It was a tactic which worked well for them during the war, but after close evaluations of the class, the Yutang seemed to lack a dedicated command and control suite. Not to mention that the Yutang was a vessel which was only effective when deployed in large numbers, and relied heavily on its complement of missiles. They also lacked a point defense system to defend itself against incoming fighters, but it was the cheapest option out of all of the tenders sent out, which was why they were being considered. Mohan Industries. Unlike Kalahari Yards, Mohan Industries was a privately owned company from the Trikoru Assembly. Their offering was called the Type 011 frigate, also known as the Dura class, after the first ship was built. Mohan had actually built vessels for a number of other governments outside of the Assembly, and were quite popular, as their modular designs mean each vessel could be customized to meet the needs. What could be a simple patrol ship for one navy could be an electronic warfare vessel for another, or a long-range escort ship for convoys, or even a medical frigate. At a little over 200 meters in length, they were a little more pricey when compared to the Yutang, but during an evaluation cruise on a Type 011 belonging to the Thaid Naval Forces, it soon became clear that the modular design had some problems of its own. As the vessel systems had issues integrating with Thaid technology, it seemed these vessels only worked well when fitted with systems and equipment provided by the Trikoru and Mohan. A serious problem to consider, since the Tagali planned to build some of these vessels on their home world. Lockheed Hanwa Heavy Industries. Finally, the humans had offered a destroyer-type vessel based off their Trinidad-class light cruiser. During the war, the Trinidad class were the workhorse for the United Earth Navy, and were commonly used as command ships for both destroyer and corvette formations. They were the most heavily armed of the 3 ships selected for evaluation, as they were armed with dual Type 05 railguns and up to 12 anti-ship missile pods as its main armament, with a secondary armament consisting of 18 30mm point defense turrets and 8 anti-missile laser turrets. Of course, the design being offered by the humans was a toned-down version of the Trinidad, as it did away with the railguns and had a focus on missiles as its main weapon. It also had a dedicated command and control suite, which could be used to coordinate with other vessels, as well as a somewhat large hangar bay, which could house up to 4 support craft. At almost 355 meters in length, The humans' proposal was by far the most expensive offer out of the three, and it was based on a design that was over 60 years old at this point. Could it really meet the needs of the Star Navy? Over the last 6 stellar months, Admiral Tor had a chance to inspect all 3 vessels' designs, and even conducted a mock battle between the 3. All 3 vessels had their pros and cons. They had advantages and disadvantages. It was close, but in the end only one vessel would go on to make up the new Togali fleet. 1 year later, Olympus Mons shipyards. Admiral Tor looked on proudly at the 400 naval personnel that stood before him. After 1 year of intense training, they were now ready to begin the voyage home with the Navy's newest vessels. As part of the deal which was signed, the United Earth Navy would transfer 2 of the light cruisers to the Star Navy as an interim solution until the new Navy-class destroyers would be delivered. The Hordara, ex-UES Jamaica, and the Kalswan, ex-UES Ceylon, had been transferred to the Togali Star Navy, and after a year of work and training they were both ready to deploy to their new home. Not only would they form the core of the new fleet, but would be used to train future Togali crews of the new vessels to come. Though this was only the beginning, as his government had still shown an interest in the Iktang as a possible patrol ship that could work alongside the future Navy class. Of course, there were those who were rather miffed that the human vessels were selected, as they were the most expensive out of the 3, but eventually they realized that they were getting a lot for the price they agreed to pay. With one final command, the Togali crews soon began to board their new ships. In less than an hour, the 2 cruisers would leave space dock to begin their voyage home, thus marking the beginning of a new chapter in human-Togali relations.